Hey, board gamers, BJ from Game Gumbo here, back in the Gumbo pot. I'm solo right now. That's because Jack and I are taking a break from our game of Dungeons Dragons Onslaught, Nightmare of the Frogmire Coven. It's part of the Maps and Monsters expansion for the original Onslaught. You've seen us cover Onslaught. We've gone through the base game and a lot of the expansions, and that's thanks to our friends at WizKids who sent us these review copies. Let's talk a little bit about what the game's about. Then I'll give you 3 things that I really like about this expansion. So let's get right to that Game Towers table, take a look, and see what's inside this box. What is Onslaught? What I can tell you about it as a kind of a high-level overview is that it's a skirmish game. It's 2 sides battling against each other. It's P versus P with an added element that we don't see in other skirmish games, and that's the environment. Hey, this is D&D, right? I've got my group of warriors. Jack's got his group of warriors. Yes, we're going to battle. We're going to try to knock the other player out to win the game in 8 rounds, or we're going to try to score more victory points than the other person if we go the full 8 rounds and neither side is knocked out. But while we're doing that, to get those victory points, we've got to do stuff. And to do stuff, Onslaught is all about the environment. In this case, we're looking at, I'm trying not to do too many spoilers here. This is just the intro scenario, the very first scenario that you get with the Onslaught Nightmare of the Frogmire Coven expansion. Basically what happens is there's some really good guides here that come with the game and also are on the back of the rule books. They do a really good job of explaining the flow of the game, but the game is essentially D&D, right? I mean, you're each going to have a group of warriors. You'll pick, in this particular case for this scenario, we picked 5, and they all come from different factions. He's got one faction, I've got the other faction. The way that you do your characters is kind of unique. It gives you that D&D flavor where we've got some random initiative cards. The first player is always going to have that one card. That's the one Jack has over here. But the other cards are going to be divided up between the 2 players. You'll secretly assign the initiative cards to your characters, and then we'll flip those over one by one, starting with the 1 and going all the way to the end, all the way to 12 if you have each 6 on a side. In this particular case, we would only have 10. So during that turn, you'll take the full actions of that player character. The production quality of this game is just fantastic. Right out of the box, you get all of these big player character dials, and the dials tell you a little bit about your character, what faction they belong to, and then the movement, the shield, in other words, the defense, and the health. And these will rotate as you lose, meaning that you're actually going to get slower, or in some cases, your elements of your character are going to change as you take hits. Also, if you use one of these special powers that you have, there's a cooldown phase. So for instance, if I used my monk, the flowing maple, and I used flurry of blows as my big standard action, I've got to set that on a 3. And that means for the next 3 turns, I can't use that action. So I like the fact that, it already comes ready to go with all these different characters. All the characters have all the D&D flavor, the D&D actions you have, and you can kind of manipulate your turn. You can always give up a standard action or even a movement action to take other bonus actions. So, the standard action being the most powerful, you can drop down. Maybe you want to run across the board and take 2 movement actions and then 1 more action. You can do that. You can kind of customize your turn. So that's where it kind of feels a little bit more like an RPG, where you're able to not just, this is what you have to do, 1, 2, 3. So that's a unique aspect. In between those turns, though, as we're going down the initiative order, we got to deal with the baddies. And over here in this particular scenario, we've got 3 baddies that we have to deal with. We've got these kobolds, and then we have this archer kind of out here in the middle, and then the bullywog ambusher. And that's this one over here that my sorcerer has been battling with for a couple of rounds. So I don't want to spoil how the scenario is, but each one of these in the book gives an initiative value. So when it comes to that turn, and they're always 0.5, so they're in between the player turns. So when we get to, for instance, if I take action number 4, and then before Jack can take action number 5, we've got to deal with the kobolds. Now that gives that planning element that I like. And instead of just being random flips or a dice roll or something, you can kind of know what your characters are going to do. You don't know exactly what order the other side is going to do, but you know in relationship between your characters and what the enemies are going to do. So that's a pretty cool aspect in terms of game mechanics, keeping that flow of the game. Basically, the flow of the game is players take actions. When it comes to monsters take initiatives. And when everybody's taking all their actions, there's some cleanup at the end of the phase. We'll get some of our powers back. We'll move we'll move the dials around a little bit. So there are environmental effects out here, though. And you can see these. In every scenario, it's going to be a little bit different. But this intro is a pretty good example of what you'll see. You've got loot. And that's what these loot tokens. Ignore that one. I just couldn't find a loot token. So forget that. It should be a chest here. There'll be 4 chests. When you get to those chests, that's where a little bit of randomness comes in. Each scenario has a different set of treasures that could come out. You'll draw them out of the bag. And then whatever that is, that's what you're going to get for that round. Some of those can even be cursed. And that means that it might be a powerful action or a powerful artifact or something. But you have to deal with it. You can't just get rid of it. You can't throw it away. It might be a really powerful axe, but you're stuck with it. So that's some of the elements that you see that you can interact with. But there are others. In this particular scenario, the Frogmire scenario, we've got bridges. We've got all this water to deal with. Well, the characters can carry around, like my monk was carrying around this bridge and placed it down so that she could run over here. And that brings that cool element. Again, feeling like an RPG, almost video game-like, where characters are carrying stuff, characters are interacting with the background. In this opening scenario, we're dealing with prisoners that have been captured by this evil sorceress. And again, they're out on the board. They're little tokens, of course. They're not miniatures, but that's okay. They've got really good graphics that stand out. So I like the way it looks and the way it plays. But the game is D&D game, and it's going to come down to dice rolls. So far, in this scenario, everybody has advantage. So you roll 2 dice and you take the best one. Oh, that's a great roll. 2 17s. That would have been a good one for this fight that I'm dealing with this kobold. That's kind of the lay. We're going to play 8 rounds where all of our characters are going to take actions, assuming that they're on the board and active. In between our turns, we'll have to deal with the baddies. If we knock the other side out during those 8 rounds, we win the game. If we don't, it's whoever scores the most victory points. Victory points coming from either objectives during the scenario, like in this one, rescuing prisoners, or actually doing cool stuff on your character boards. Some of those will give you experience points. So that's just kind of a general overview of how Onslaught works. Let's get to the 3 things that I really like about this expansion. Number 1, I like the fact that this expansion has brought in, some unique monsters. It's not your typical dragons in a cave. Nothing wrong with dragons. Absolutely love dragons, but don't always want to see dragons or those kind of things. Big giant dragon in a cave, go out and take them out. This is the swampy area where you've got these really cool, these really wicked looking frogs that you have to deal with, and it gives a sense of a different kind of place, a mysterious place that's going to be fun to explore. So I like the fact that the Frogmire Coven is kind of a unique, it's a different way of playing some D&D. This is one that I would have enjoyed playing as a campaign, when I was playing D&D back in high school and college. So that's the first thing I like. I really like the uniqueness of the setting. I think Jack's going to be surprised at how the story is going to build up. There's 6 main scenarios that kind of play out in order, and it also comes with another scenario if you have a larger party, like if you can play with the 3 or 4 player rules, and there's also a little solo scenario. So I do like the way that this is going to be built out in a campaign. It's an interesting setting. Second thing I really like about this expansion, it's got that D&D feel. Right off the bat, the scenario puts you in a. I'm not spoiling anything because it's at the very start. You're in this tavern. You and the other party, opposite sides of the tavern. The owner, old Bess, is kind of eyeing everybody. She's ready to close up. She's wondering if these drunk adventurers are going to start duking it out. and then something bad happens, or as they say in the movie biz, complications ensue. And I love that. That's what we like playing D&D about. We're at a tavern and we just finished some big adventure. We're spinning our coin. Maybe we're getting a little low, and all of a sudden somebody hatches a crazy plot and they want to hire us, or somebody storms in and terrorizes, and we gotta take care of it. It's like getting right to the heart of a cool D&D adventure. So kudos to the writers. It really gave me the feel of all those D&D campaigns that I used to love. So I like that. I like the fact that it really plays out and comes across as every bit a classic D&D adventure. The third thing I like, and this goes to Onslaught in general, but specifically to this Nightmare of the Frogmire Coven, the toy factor. I mean, when I first started playing D&D way back in the red box, I remember going to a little place called Little Wars in Baton Rouge. It was in this shopping center right next to a bookstore, and I saw for the first time those little metal miniatures. And we'd been playing D&D without those, but once we saw those miniatures, we knew right away that's how we wanted to play D&D, and that's what this game gives you. It gives you beautiful, detailed miniatures. I'm not a painter, so I can't judge the paint job. I'm just telling you that I love the way this paint looks. I mean, this big archer here has so much detail. There is scales that you can see. The feathers are painted. Even the bow has streaks on it, where there's like almost gold plating like on the wooden bow. So the actual miniatures themselves look fantastic. They give you a ton of them. There's even more in the box. There's this big giant frog behemoth that comes out of the water. And look at this thing. It's got a tongue that is just racing out. Let me see if I can show you there. It's got this big giant tongue just angling to sweep somebody. It's got these crystallized like acrylic, but it's made to look like a swamp just churning and burning around. This is just, you plop this in the scenario, and I can't wait for Jack to see this. But it's got the game comes with even more than that. Tons of these little frog guys you have to deal with. 3 or 4 of these frog guys. You got this mysterious stranger. That'll be fun when Jack sees that. And tentacles. I mean, who doesn't get scared when tentacles like this start churning out of the water and slapping at people? So I really like the toy factor of this game. I like the fact that, it's playing out like a movie almost in my mind as Jack and I are going after each other. It doesn't feel abstract at all. It's like, no, I'm moving my monk there, grab that bridge, I'm going to try to hurry up and save my other person, maybe take out a couple of kobolds on the way. I also like the fact that all of this was put together. I didn't have to do anything. All the miniatures were already ready. They were already painted. It came with all this environmental things like the bridges. The frogamoth or frog behemoth, is a big giant set of dials with all of the different actions when it's either submerged or not. So this game is built for. I was worried because it had been a long time since we had played Onslaught. So I was really worried when I started playing it, and then I played it to get ready for whenever I knew that Jack was going to play this weekend. And I was worried that the rules were going to be all sticky and heavy, and they're not. I mean, it's essentially on this back sheet that kind of rolls through. And then when we have specific questions about what's going on in that flow chart, then I can dive into the rule book. But I found that the rules are pretty intuitive, because if you've ever played D&D and you storm out of a tavern, or you go into a cave, or you go into a battle, a keep, you know how the game is going to be played. We're going to take our turns, we're going to battle each other, and we're going to plot, and we're going to strategize. The only difference in this case with Onslaught is that we're doing it skirmish style. It's us against each other, me against Jack, and also having to deal with all this environmental things while we're doing that and trying to score points. We want to make sure if we can't knock out the other player, we want to at least score some points so we can win the game. So yeah, I really like the toy factor of this, how it just brings this D&D story alive, almost like we're playing tabletop, just like in the old days. All right, so that's inside the box of Dungeons Dragons Onslaught, Nightmare of the Frogmire Coven. It's a Maps and Monsters expansion designed by Nicholas Yu and Travis Severance, published by our friends at WizKids Games, they were kind enough to send us all of this expansion material for us to take a look at. It's been a fantastic experience going through the scenarios. I haven't got to the very end, But I want to do it with Jack as we explore all of these different scenarios. I want to see his face as he sees more of the story develop. I really like the Onslaught system because it brings back those memories of playing D&D. I play more board games now. I don't play D&D anymore, but this gives me that feel of D&D. Are you missing some of the role play? Of course you are with this is not exactly a tabletop role-playing game, but Jack and I play it that way. Although we're not, doing the outside stuff, we know that some of the weapons that we find, we're going to be keeping them for the next round. We know that we've got to help each other to make sure that these things don't kill both of us, but at the same time, we want our side to win, our faction to win. So I really think that Nicholas Yu and Travis Severance pulled off something that I didn't think they could do. They've got something pretty close to a meld between a board game and a video game and a tabletop RPG. They've got it all melded in one, and it's got rules. It's not so heavy on the rules overload that you can't just plop this thing out and start playing. You can absolutely do that. There's plenty of cheat sheets and guides inside this and some great scenarios with some great writing. So far, so good. Just remember, this was a review copy brought to us by, given to us by WizKids. And also, Nicholas has been on the show and he was a fantastic guest. So check out his interview on Gumbo Live if you go on our YouTube page. Also, check us out on Tuesdays at twitch.tv/BoardGameGumbo where we play your games live on Twitch. Until next time, Laissez, le bon temps rouler.